Hi everyone, my name is Jake Thebault-Spieker, and I'm an assistant professor in the Information School at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I want to talk to you today about our research titled Diverse Perspectives Can Mitigate Political Bias in Crowdsourced Content Moderation. Just a quick note, this work was largely conducted while I was a postdoc at Virginia Tech. By way of some background, in 2016, Russia and people working on behalf of the Russian government interfered in the United States presidential election. This is an FBI wanted poster for folks the FBI believes were participants in stealing documents and leaking them on social media. But beyond theft of documents, the Russian Internet Research Agency, an organization within the Russian government, orchestrated a coordinated disinformation campaign to influence the voting public in the United States and sway the election results. In response, many large social media companies started implementing policies disallowing political content on their platforms. But concerns about political content on social media go well beyond issues of disinformation campaigns. There's growing conversation about risks of political bias on social media and political backlash against companies perceived to be censoring certain political perspectives. One prominent example of this was Facebook's trending topics feature, which was initially algorithmic and then had human curation, and was ultimately shut down due to critique of routine suppression of conservative political news stories. When companies operate in a space where they're either enforcing policies, banning political content in posts or advertising, or trying to ensure that they're not unduly de-emphasizing some perspectives, there's risk of bias. Either because companies frequently use algorithmic systems trained on human judgments to make content moderation decisions, or because when algorithms aren't sure, these systems default back to human judgment. In both cases, there's risk of people's own views influencing their decisions about which content to hide or allow, leading to unfair decisions. Our work sits at the intersection of these two ideas. In other words, you are here. The overarching driving question of our work is how effective are human crowds at identifying and labeling political content on social media without producing unfair outcomes. So I want to quickly tell you about the structure of our experiment, but please do know that there's more detail in the paper. I'm keeping this short because of time. We first developed a stimulus set for our participants based on the set of tweets associated with the Twitter accounts from the Russian Internet Research Agency. This set of tweets was collected between June 2015 and December 2017, and the authors who created this dataset labeled each post according to the type of account that had been posting it. We needed to re-establish a post-level ground truth because the prior account-focused labels don't perfectly describe all of the content that was produced by each account. So we labeled posts as non-political or political using a coding scheme based in definitions from the field of political communication. Whether a post is political or not is our ground truth label, but we also retain the original account types as a way to interpret the political valence of these posts. We ultimately included 468 participants in our study, and these participants each saw 10 posts. We randomly assigned them to one of two conditions, either the naive condition on the top or the industry condition on the bottom. In our naive condition, we simply asked participants a question: does this post contain political content? However, in our industry condition, we asked participants to make a judgment about the content according to Twitter's definition of political content. We also showed each post to more than one participant in order to further analyze crowdsourcing aggregation techniques. So now I'd like to turn to what we found. In all cases, these results are statistically significant. For the sake of time, I'm going to ask you to look at the paper for more details there, and I'm going to focus here on two key findings. The first set of results I want to draw your attention to are our findings about individual crowd workers and their efficacy at identifying political content. Just to note, for these results, I'm going to report in precision and recall numbers and potentially accuracy numbers in some cases, because each participant saw 10 posts. First, we see that while participants in the naive condition are somewhat successful at identifying political content with a precision of 0.73, the industry condition seems to be slightly better with a precision of 0.79. To further explore this, we also wanted to look at the accuracy of correctly identifying political content according to our ground truth, broken down by the type of account creating it. While it seems that the industry condition helps increase accuracy of identifying liberal targeting content from 69% to 73%, that pattern goes away for conservative targeting content. Moreover, conservative targeting content is accurately labeled as political at a much higher rate than either liberal targeting content or news sharing focused content. In other words, our results suggest that in both interface conditions, this kind of labeling may be more accurate for some kinds of political content than others, meaning that if this were operationalized as a content moderation technique, some types of political content would be moderated at a higher rate. These findings on their face are somewhat concerning. After all, if labeling social media content to identify if it's political or not creates unfairness in which political content is hidden or removed, the popular concerns about political bias from social media companies might be credible. However, in crowdsourcing, multiple judgments about the same piece of content are commonly aggregated to increase accuracy of the overall decision. We explored two of these aggregation techniques. The most common aggregation technique is majority vote. That is, a piece of content would be considered political if, for instance, 2 out of 3 of the workers who evaluated it decided that the post was, in fact, political. In our results, the majority vote aggregation strategy did not really outperform individual judgments, so we're not presenting those results here. We also explored an aggregation strategy known as a one-yes aggregation. So suppose 2 of those 3 workers said, no, this post is not political. Under majority vote, the piece of content would get labeled as not political. However, under one yes aggregation, because one person said yes, the piece of content would get labeled as political. Our results suggest that the one yes aggregation approach substantially improves the precision of both the naive and industry conditions to 0.88 and 0.91 respectively. Turning again to accuracy across different types of accounts, these results look positive. The one yes aggregation technique increases accuracy across the board in both the naive and the industry condition. But I want to draw your attention to something specific. One yes aggregation in the industry condition seems to achieve near parity across different types of content. We were curious about this. It was kind of surprising. So we broke down the precision and recall results by the self-reported political composition of teams. Participants in our study self-reported as Democrats, Republicans, or other, and we randomly assigned them to evaluate the same post as others, which is how these teams get created. There's a lot of numbers here, and this table's in the paper, but I want to show you something specific. In general, teams that were composed of crowd workers with diverse political perspectives tended to perform as or more effectively than teams that were homogeneously constructed. So to step back a little bit, our results suggest that first, individual crowd workers can recognize and label political content reasonably successfully. But there's a big caveat. This individual success isn't fair. Some kinds of content get labeled more accurately than others, creating a risk of political bias if we treat all individuals as replaceable. Second, a one yes aggregation technique that elevates minority perspectives can meaningfully increase the precision of this labeling beyond the rate of individual judgment. And third, more than merely increasing precision rates, our results show that one yes aggregation teams that incorporate a diverse set of political perspectives may actually help mitigate the risk that some political groups get treated unfairly in political content labeling processes. In other words, we found that listening to diverse perspectives may be important for ensuring fairness in labeled data. Now, listening to diverse perspectives isn't new, but we empirically show that the operational value of this type of inclusivity in the context of political content. This suggests that labeling workflows that can help ensure diverse perspectives are going to be important for fairness in data labeling. Now, this is sort of a chicken and egg problem. After all, how do we know which dimensions matter for a given context? How do we build these heterogeneously aggregated crowd teams to do this bias mitigation? Here, we diversified on political orientation when trying to label content as political. But when we think about hate speech or culturally sensitive topics, the important dimensions become less clear. We think that knowing how to identify and operationalize which perspective is important for a given problem is both likely critical in order to help mitigate the risk of bias in labeling processes and a really key next step from our work here. And with that, I'd like to thank my co-authors, other members of our research team, Paul, David, and Chris, our funders, and importantly, all of you. Thank you all very much for your time.